Okay, welcome to this class again. In this section, we'll be considering the annexation and colonization of Lagos in the middle of the 19th century. We've noted in our previous section that the British had actually bombarded Lagos in 1851 due to the refusal of King Kosoko to play to their tune. So, of course, 10 years later in 1861, the British forced the successor, King Dosumu, to hand over the political institutions in Lagos to the British. So in 1861, the commander of the British Naval Squadron forced King Dosumu to hand over the control of Lagos to the British. So the people of Lagos then became the subjects of the Queen of Britain. That is the implication. Of course, by this, a British governor was appointed to rule Lagos with the help of some government officials. So the political authority shifted drastically from the indigenous people. All the political institutions in place in the pre-colonial period actually fell to the British government. The Oba was relegated, his power was eroded, and the British instituted a colonial system in Lagos. So soon the governor imposed on Lagos realized that he could not probably rule effectively without the help of the Oba and chiefs in Lagos, and this is the precursor to the relevance, of course, partly relevance of the Oba in Lagos. Initially, the Oba was relegated, and but subsequently, the British didn't. They needed his assistance. So the British forcefully took Lagos in 1861 for many reasons. That is the question. So first, they wanted to control Lagos, to control the trade, particularly in Lagos. It was not basically about a function of the refusal of King Kosoko to hand over Lagos, or to stop the slave trade. What was important is that the British needed to control the trade in Lagos after the slave trade, which they once enjoyed, had crumbled. So secondly is that they complained that the Oba, of course, Oba Kosoko did not want to stop the slave trade. As mentioned, of course, the third is that Britain wanted to prevent other Europeans, particularly France, from controlling Lagos. You recall that after the abolition of the slave trade, all the European powers were probably competing keenly for space and territories in Africa and West Africa. You recall that was what perhaps led them to the Berlin Conference in 1884 to 1885. So to achieve this goal, the British forced Oba Dosumu to sign a document called the Treaty of Cession in 1861. Accordingly, the British declared that the Oba had transferred its authority to Queen of England, whose symbol of authority was a crown. So Lagos became a crown colony, that is to say. So this was why this new system of government that the British imposed on Lagos was called the crown colony system. Under the crown colony system, the Oba of Lagos was treated as a paid agent of the British government. So he was subdued, he was relegated. As a matter of fact, the people of Lagos were told to be loyal to the Queen of England and no longer to the Oba Dosumu. So the allegiance of the people of Lagos was to shift. They had to take instruction not from the Oba anymore now, but from the British authorities, the governors and administrators. So this type of government was a direct rule. Since the British governor of the Crown Colony tried to rule Lagos directly with the assistance of a few British officials. So in essence, the Crown Colony system is quite different from the indirect rule system of government which the British practiced in several parts of their empires in the 20th century. So as a rule, the British adopted this model in place where they had signed treaties of friendship and of commerce and protection with the local people. So in signing the agreement, the two parties believe that the British government had to come to protect the people. Some of the major clauses in this treaty signed. So this was why such territories were called the protectorate in most of this area. So under this system, traditional rulers were allowed to take part in government, under the protectorate system, the indirect rule system, which was adopted in the 20th century. Of course, particularly to ensure good governance, the colonial governor often appointed senior government officials called resident officials. But in the case of Lagos, being a crown colony, it was quite different. So in the first 3 years after establishing the colony, the Lagos colony, Governor H.S. Freeman concentrated his attention on the maintenance of law and order in Lagos. All right, realizing that, of course, the crisis that had actually engulfed or characterized the city following the removal of one king from King Kosoko, Akintoye, and all of that. So there was need for the colonial authorities to ensure the maintenance of law and order first, and this was the first preoccupation of the Governor H.S. Freeman. Of course, this was also because the people were not happy with the way the British took over the control of Lagos. There were quite a number of agitations and protests and demonstrations against the colonial system. So the chiefs who owned the land in different parts of Lagos did not want the British also to take over their lands. Of course, in most cases, it is possible that they would have instigated people against the colonial system. So these chiefs, of course, the Idejo, as we have known, the white cap chiefs, didn't find it quite convenient that their powers, which they had enjoyed, was actually being eroded with the colonial system. So for 20 years, Lagos was administered with the instruction received first from Sierra Leone and then Gold Coast. That means because of the vastness of the British colonial empire in West Africa, the British could not, it was a direct rule system, I told you. It was difficult for the colonial authorities to govern all of these West African colonies. So Lagos, the administration of Lagos was under the umbrella of a single governor who coordinated other areas in Sierra Leone, in Gold Coast, and Lagos. So in 1866, the British decided to merge all its colonies in West Africa. Of course, one single governor was appointed to be in charge of all this big territory called the British West Africa. As I've mentioned, the governor was stationed in Sierra Leone, the oldest of the British colonies in West Africa. So Britain carried out this administrative reorganization for several reasons. First is that it was meant to reduce the cost of administration, since Britain would pay the salary of only one governor instead of four governors, one for Lagos, one for Gold Coast, one for Sierra Leone, and one for Gambia. So this was one of the reasons why the British merged all the British colonies, Gambia, Gold Coast, Sierra Leone, and Lagos together under the umbrella of one governor. Well, this didn't all go well with the people of Lagos. So it was also intended also to promote interaction and unity among the people of these colonies. The British wanted a situation whereby its colony in Lagos, in Gambia, in Sierra Leone, in Gold Coast, Ghana, will have interactions with others. Similar policies would be used to govern them, since they belong to the same British Empire. So also another reason why the British adopted that policy was that the distance between Lagos and Freetown, where the governor was stationed, the capital of Sierra Leone, created some problems. So one is that decision could not be taken and implemented immediately in Lagos. All of these matters will have to go to Freetown, and this actually affected the day-to-day running of the colonial state in Lagos. Another issue is that the educated elite in Lagos had also begun to complain that the British government in Lagos could no longer settle disputes or to protect the interests of the Yoruba people in the interior without obtaining instruction from Sierra Leone. So because of this shortcoming, so they began to demand in the newspaper for the restoration of Lagos to its former status of a separate colony. I've told you, so when we are looking at education, that the evolution of printing press helped Lagosians to freely express themselves against some of the policies of colonial administration. So they also sent letters in this regard to the government, petitions. This request, of course, was not granted immediately, but was done in stages. So in 1872, the British reconstituted the British West African colonies into two. Lagos was placed under the governor of the Gold Coast, now known as Ghana. Although this reorganization did not fully satisfy the demands of the people, but at least the distance between Lagos and the Gold Coast was shorter than that of Lagos and the Freetown. So in 1897, the Native Advisory Board was created by the colonial authority. So as government began to pay more attention to the welfare of the people, this Native Advisory Board was reorganized and turned into Native Executive Council. Of course, this was also characterized with a lot of problems in the sense that the composition of these native councils and boards were strictly by the Europeans. The Europeans dominated all of these key important positions. So what about the administration in Lagos? Two other important changes were made in terms of administration in Lagos. First is that the title of the most senior British official in Lagos was changed from administrator to lieutenant governor. All right, so a body called the Legislative Council was established to assist the lieutenant governor to run the economy. So these are some of the important changes made towards the around the end of the 19th century. So in this case, members of the council were European administrators, traders, or expatriate nominated or appointed by the government. So I've told you that they were strictly made up of Europeans, either traders, merchants, European administrators. Later on, subsequently, due to protests and agitations by Africans, such as James Pearson, Labilo Davis, were nominated into the Legislative Council. This was just to put a face, an African face to all of these issues. So the Legislative Council could advise the government, but the governor could reject the advice. That means whatever recommendations, all right, or suggestions made by Africans in this council were just tangential. The agitation for separation continued until 1886, when Lagos was restored ultimately to its former status of a full colony, as it was in 1861. Okay, so the restoration of the colony status brought important changes. Of course, one is that the head of the government was called the governor from 1886, instead of lieutenant governor. So this restoration brought about the appointment of a substantive governor for Lagos. An executive council also was created to help the governor to run the state. Membership of this legislative council also drastically increased due to the agitations of the Lagos community. This included the colonial secretary, the Queen's advocate, the chief judge, and three other representatives. Of course, they were Captain Ahmad, C.J. George, and an African trader, then Reverend James Johnson, who was an African priest. So these were a few Africans that were added into this executive council in a way to give face to the to give credence to this colonial administrative system. So let's look at the ways in which Lagos was divided into administrative districts. So as soon as the colonial status of Lagos was restored in 1886, as we have noted, the governor divided the entire area into 4 administrative sections, districts, for effective control. These 4 administrative districts were, namely, we have the Metropolitan District, which was Lagos Island. We have the Western District, Badagry. We have the Northeastern District, Ikorodu, and you have the Eastern District, Ekpe. Of course, I told you earlier on, when we were looking at the other topic, that in 1967, when Lagos State was created, the administrative district increased to 5 with an addition of Ikeja. But under colonial system, the colonial government only created 4 administrative districts: Lagos Island, Badagry, Ikorodu, and Ekpe. So the government also created several departments headed by the British officials. These were the custom department, police, prison, medical services, sanitary, post office, public works, railway, harbour, and also education department. So these were some of the structures put in place by the colonial government, which also survived after the colonial period. The judiciary, for instance, was under the control of a chief judge who also presided over the Supreme Court. And you have the district commissioners who were appointed and who was in charge of the various districts in Lagos. There were also, in addition, native council, for the colony. Native council was also, created. As earlier stated, the crown colony system of administration was one in which the British tried to rule the local people without, involving the traditional rulers. The Oba had been relegated. They have lost the respect they had. So, in a way to now make up for all of this, the colonial government realized the need to introduce the native council system. So, since the former system had failed to work in Lagos for many reasons. So, the British government did not have enough Europeans to run the government. The reason for the colonial government to introduce the native, to rethink, to rethink about the inclusion of the traditional authorities is because they were short-staffed. They didn't have enough European officials to run the government. Number one is that the cost of administration is a problem. The second is that the prevalence of mosquito and malaria. Some of the European officials were coming because West Africa, the tropic area, was regarded as the graveyard for the white people. So it was necessary for them to make use of the traditional rulers, just like what they did in the 20th century when indirect rule was introduced. Secondly, is that the government wanted to interact with the people of Lagos and to reduce the policies, and project to reduce the policies and project more programs for the colonial state. The colonial government felt it was necessary to introduce native council. This was the beginning of the change, from direct administration to a mild form of indirect rule system in Lagos. At least for the first time, the status of the Oba of Lagos gradually increased. The Oba started gaining expression in the day-to-day business of colonial capitalism or colonial administration. All right. So at first, Governor Williams Callum thought of creating a municipal government for Lagos, Lagos Island, and also the municipal district. So this body will be given the power to collect levies or tax for the government, especially in terms of improving the health facilities and infrastructure in Lagos. These traditional obas or rulers will play some of this role. The people of Lagos therefore opposed this idea because they did not want to pay tax on the one hand. Number two is that the governor, the government policy had been quite very overbearing on the people, and the people of Lagos, put in place several protests and pressures on the government. The government, however, dropped the idea and created the Native Advisory Board in 1897, as opposed to the Native Council. Native Advisory Board was created in 1897. In this case, members of the board included 8 principal chiefs, several ward heads, and 3 educated Lagosians, including J.S. Lee, Sapara Williams, and P.L. Davis. These are some of the people included. So in this case, some of the prominent traditional obas in Lagos, kings in Lagos were included into this Native Advisory Board. So the board played the role of intermediary between the government and the people of Lagos, and in making effective the administration of colonial system. In 1899, Governor McCallum was succeeded by Governor Williams MacGregor, who also brought in some changes. The new governor was determined, for instance, to give the people of Lagos more roles in the government, since people had been complaining about the exclusion, about the relegation of the traditional authorities. So he transformed the Native Advisory Board into a central Native Council. This are another changes, another improvement made in the political system. It transformed the Native Advisory Board into a central Native Council. So in this case, the number of members increased to 23, so that representative of market associations and religious groups could be included. He himself became the president of the Central Native Council, while the Oba of Lagos was a vice president. So this was a kind of improvement in the colonial system. For the first time, the government created a special department also to promote the welfare of Lagosians. So this department was called Department of Native Affairs. All right. So the government appointed a prominent African elite, Enrica, a highly educated Lagosians, to be the secretary of this council. And from that time onward, the council opposed government policies and actions that could affect the people negatively. So when the government made a law to control the cutting of timber between 1901 and 1902, the council drastically opposed it. And this was also because of the fear that government will eventually take over all the unused land in Lagos, because colonial government actually exercise strong influence over land and other immovable property in Lagos. So the council was involved in all the serious protests that took place during the government of Sir Walter Egerton, who became the governor in 1904. The governor forcefully, of course, acquired areas like Ikoyi and Victoria Island from the Lagos chiefs in 1905, and this was a subject of litigation in Lagos. So by the end of the 20th century, Lagos had actually emerged as a full-scale colonial entity, which saw rapid development, modernization. As we have noted, quite a number of colonial systems and structures were introduced to Lagos. Bureaucracy were introduced, and fundamentally by 1906, it was imperative for the colonial administration to merge Lagos with the other entities in southern Nigeria. So in 1906, a major development that occurred was the amalgamation of the Lagos colony with the protectorate of southern Nigeria into what became known as the colony and protectorate of southern Nigeria, with Lagos occupying a key role as a center of political and economic activities in Lagos. Of course, several developments also took place thereafter. In 1914, when it became so imperative for the colonial government to merge the entire entity known as Nigeria under the same umbrella, so Lagos also remained so pivotal, so central to the business of colonial administration. In 1914, the entity known as Nigeria was amalgamated. That is, the Northern Protectorate was amalgamated, was merged with the colonial protectorate of Southern Nigeria into what was known as the Protectorate of Nigeria, Nigerian Protectorate. And several changes that occur during this period included constitutional changes and political development and activities development. All of these development to be considered when we are looking at Lagos since the 20th century in our HSS 219 in 200 level. But in this section, we have been able to discuss how Lagos was annexed and how Lagos was colonized between 1861 to 1899, or the end of the 19th century. So I enjoin you to subscribe, to like, and to share this tutorial for further information. Thank you very much.